I can't even get right shoulder, left shoulder down. I am not cut out for high match. I'm like, baby, just pick it up. I'm like, they think it's their egg. Just pick it up and go. I'll tell you in the video, yeah, you got to throw that apple peel over your left shoulder so you don't ever mess it up. You don't ever know whether or not going to use those apple peels again, especially if you're going to end up doing baneful magic. Even something as innocuous as a freezer spell can backfire. It's not that I'm sick of people shit. I just don't care.
This is Peck. I would like to introduce you to Peckish Pagan. That's your channel anyway. And she is going to be the next person that I am interviewing for our Crones series here. And I'm really excited to get to know her because pretty much the only thing I know about Peck is that she's into augury. But other than that, this is going to be like opening up a secret can of something.
Something's right.
No, you're also making your own oracle card deck. That's the other thing that I know that's really cool.
Yeah. I just dropped that news yesterday. I charged some eclipse water. I live in the path of totality, so we were out and about, and I charged some water and posted a video about that, and a few other things just for that project, and just some other things to have, because when is that going to happen again? Take advantage of it as much as I could. But yeah, that's up and coming. It's going to feature all the things from my local area. I've got a lot of pretty neat waterways. We got a lot of great birds, all fauna, flora, man-made structures, geological structures. We have stones and strata in this area that are not found anywhere else on the planet. So those things have come to mean things to me over the years. Just and their uniqueness and what they represent. Even the bugs. I'm gonna get into some of the shadow stuff, the things you don't like. And maybe you, just because you don't like them doesn't mean that they're not beneficial. So
You get cicadas?
we do. I think this is
I love them.
going to be a cicada year. It is allegedly going to get pretty wild this year. We just had 17-year cicadas a couple years ago.
Oh, interesting. I just heard on the East Coast that they're having the 13-year and the 17-year merged together this year, which is crazy.
Is that this year? I thought that was a 7. I may be wrong, but I just remember it being just deafening. And here's the other thing, like the last time we had a 17-year, I did not live in the Great Lakes region. I lived towards Southern Ohio. So it's actually a different hardiness zone. So it could have been, just on a different cycle. But and then, when I move up here and I'm like, well, you guys have cicadas like every 7 years, it seems like. And then a few years ago, it was that same deafening. I was like, oh, I just assumed that it was 17 years. That's crazy. I'm gonna look that up now. Jonathan Van Ness did a really good podcast on cicadas. I highly recommend it. I've never learned so much about a single bug in my life.
Okay.
And also that there's a difference between bugs and insects.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Watch that. Highly recommend.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I just recently heard on the radio that on the East Coast, the 13-year cicadas and the 17-year cicadas are coming out for the first time since Jefferson was president or something.
Wow.
It was
so much
it's a really long time. Yeah.
For the first time in hundreds of years.
Yeah. Something like that. I can't remember the details, but it was a really long time. I was like, wow, man, that's intense and also really cool. I wish I lived on the East Coast to experience it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I live in a marshy area. We definitely will get whatever we're getting. They'll be nearby me for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. We used to be able to volunteer, and you could go online and upload counts, of different frogs and things that you found. I think there's an app now, but they'll be on there. They'll be on there if they're expected. So.
That's cool. What's the app?
Cleveland. It's through the Cleveland Historical Society. No, I said there probably is an app. I use one for the ornithological Society. It's a free app. It's called Merlin ID, and it's a bird identification app. It's free, and if you hear a bird call, you can just record bird sounds. And that's the other thing I like about this app, is that you can go back and listen to those birds. You can go back and listen to that moment. So if you're, in a state, or you're just out having a moment and you just happen to have that going,
Mm-hmm.
you can go back in, and then also that helps Cornell University track where these birds are being heard,
Oh,
and
interesting.
they also have access to the recording. So there's that.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really
So
cool.
yeah, I'm sure that the National Historical Museum has something for, I forget who they paired up with. I'll get it wrong. Um, but you know, there are volunteers, and this is something that I did during the pandemic, because it was all electronic, and it got me out and about and doing something. So that's when I learned about a lot of the frogs. We actually have fairy shrimp in my area. So there's such a thing as freshwater shrimp. They're like sea monkeys. They dry up with the vernal pools.
Oh,
That's one of the things I wanted to collect for the Oracle deck to charge under the eclipse, but I don't
sea
want to
monkeys.
collect any marsh water because you know, it's still vernal season, and I don't, you know, there's certain things that I don't like to mess with. So I just
Yeah.
know that there are probably going to be thousands of species of life forms and whatever bottle I get. So I'll leave them be. I'll let
Oh,
them go dormant. I'll get my water from somewhere else.
aren't sea monkeys actually shrimp?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you let them go, they actually will get kind of big. I
Really?
don't know how big. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
They get noticeable, but yeah.
so interesting. I mean, I think it's interesting, but um
So do I.
I'm curious to know sort of where did your practice begin and where is it now and where do you foresee it going?
So my practice started in at 92.
Hmm.
I got a copy of Raymond Buckland's Secrets of Gypsy Love Magic
Okay.
because, you know, what 15-year-old girl doesn't want to learn about love magic? And it was available in a local bookstore. It was like the Walden Books at our local mall.
Hmm.
And he was kind of hyper specific with the things that he would write, like stolen apples. And I get the meaning behind some of the things, you know, even with a stolen apple, that you have to, if you're not willing to steal an apple, you don't want this. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like it was that kind of energy.
Hmm.
So that's where it really where it started. Um, and it didn't really take off until after I'd graduated. You know,
Hmm.
I was always kind of the kid that knew about what mushrooms were growing, where you could find them, what herb. Hey, don't eat that. Stop touching that. No, you know, let's not go down there. It looks like it's going to be too cold. How do
Hmm.
you know these things? Well, it's going to rain. Well, you look at stuff. So that was always a part of it. I don't even know if that was my practice. That was just how I lived.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, things that you pick up, you know, from your environment, and that's the kind of thing that carries over. Like you can go anywhere, and you know when the leaves turn up. Like I can't believe that people don't know that when you can see the undersides of leaves, it's probably going to rain. Like you can
Hmm.
bet it. I would bet all the money in my pockets anytime I see that. But there are people who don't know about stuff like that. But those are the kinds of things that I just kind of picked up along the way.
Hmm.
But really incorporating that into realizing even that that was part of my spiritual practice.
Hmm.
Um, it didn't really come until I was in my 20s and got it on my own and could have my own space and really set up things how I wanted them to be because we never got baptized in my family. Like we weren't allowed to get baptized until we were 18.
Hmm.
So I actually had a couple of religious experiences. I used to work for a Jewish organization, so I had, you know, worked there for 2 years, went through all the different holidays, the different celebrations, and even the people that I worked with, they explained, they're like, "This is a Jewish experience for you," and I'm like, "Okay," and I remember that a lot of that, you know, remains with me to this day, and there are things that you know I still revere, and there are parallels, you know, that you can see within the foundational Abrahamic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. There are parallels between them, and so learning about all that in Judaism, that wasn't something that I would have ever had the
Hmm.
opportunity growing up. You know, but having that experience was something that really it kind of shaped and my understanding of how what happens in one place, similar things, even if it's not the same thing, that same spirit, that gathering is prevalent no matter what the religion is, I feel like. any that I've experienced, and I haven't experienced all of them, but one of my closest friends is Muslim, and knowing him and being good friends with him and understanding that you can be friends with a Muslim man and it's, nobody's in danger or doing anything wrong. And there are people who don't understand that. That's part of that experience has kind of opened my eyes to where I am today, and that, I just want there to be a sense of where I am in my practice, like keeping it more local. I like to keep my food local. I like to work. I shop local, and I'm looking at some of the things that I like to keep around, and a lot of it is it's commercial. I do like to buy the intention oils. I'm a floozy for stuff like that. But I started looking at my own weeds a couple years ago, and I'm like, I can make this. This is growing in my backyard. Why am I not doing this? And that's right around the same time that people started making content about that, and it makes sense. And I think everything's just kind of naturally progressed, and I don't know. I think that's just something that I've noticed over the years from 1992 to now. It's the same progression in the same cycles.
So you're seeing things recycle essentially?
Kind of, yes, in different ways. Like, back in the day, you were either Wiccan or Pagan. You could be an eclectic witch, but for the most part, witches were considered Wiccan. And it was right around that time that they weren't, and people were still, refusing to validate solitary practices. So trying to find your place in the world, even within your own community, there were struggles. But knowing that you had that solitary path, that was a comfort. And then now, like, that's kind of, it's not even really discussed. We know what solitary means, but it's such an inherent part of our lexicon now that it's, there are some things like solitary, and then also the term eclectic, I feel like are two words that we know what they mean. We kind of know where they come from, but understanding the history of those a little bit more. I think we should bring those back today, because so many people are green witches and hedge witches and kitchen witches and all these great kinds of things. We're eclectic. So stuff like that. So we come right back around to that. And I, the validation that we're looking for is there within our own practice, but then still not quite there out in the rest of the world. Although I do kind of like going to the craft store and seeing, kawaii tarot decks and a mushroom magic book. So, but it's, it evolves definitely in cycles, and it almost seems like, when they say history repeats itself, that's kind of how, you just got to go back and brush through what it was that you just went through and keep polishing. Even that's a process. That kind of describes my practice too, because, I was baptized as a Catholic at one point along the way. Obviously I've lapsed, and that is a whole story in itself, that whole journey. But I never, really broke away from keeping any kind of atonement with nature in my practice. It was something that I absolutely had to have, or it affects me. And I think it affects me less now that I have embraced it more as a spiritual practice, and bringing back the term pagan. Like, it's not used nearly enough. I mean, that's what we all are. Deep down, with us, strip away everything, and we're all a bunch of pagans.
Right. Well, if you're not Abrahamic, you're pagan, right?
Yeah. Even strip that away too. I mean, you believe that.
What do you have a flavor of practice in terms of, like, what would you describe your practice as, or like, or then and today?
Honestly, I try to embrace my practice as if, using the resources that I have, and this is thinking about this is what got me back around to local, what I would do if the Abrahamic religions never existed. Because that is, once I realized that I was not going to be able to take communion anymore, I'm like, that's it for me. I'm not, I can't sit at that table anymore. I don't want to sit at that table anymore. Maybe I'll go back. I don't know. I'm just not there yet. No hard feelings. I just where I'm at. So thinking about what I would do if if they never existed, what would we be like? How would I practice my faith? What would I honor?
Hmm.
And it's been kind of hard because we did grow up in a Christian way. We celebrated Christmas and Easter,
Hmm.
and somehow we celebrated Lent, but we definitely we're not Catholic. But just stripping all that away, because there are little habits, with the having to do something on a specific day. It's a season. These are seasons.
Hmm.
Um, so breaking it down like that, looking at the seasons and stuff. I'm starting to lose my train of thought. It's gone. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was just asking if you had a specific flavor to your practice.
No, no, not really. Just the elements,
Hmm.
elemental magic.
Okay.
I tend to approach those as much as possible because they're accessible almost anywhere.
Hmm.
Like they're free. You can like I was saying, oils. There's waters. That's in food. That's in sunlight. That's in literally the air. I have altars I'm in my temple room right now. Behind me is part of my earth corner to the north. And then I have a water altar with different kinds of waters. I have a fire altar. That's actually what spearheaded this endeavor, was a fire altar. I had a solo return reading done by Hannah Hawthorne of Simply Witched. I know how to invoke the elements, and she's like, "You have no fire in your chart next year." I was like, "I need to get some fire. I'm gonna make a fire altar. Let's do it." And that's always been my thing. Whatever I got, let's make a little spot for it. You don't have to call it an altar, just, but it's totally an altar. Just honor that thing. Put the fire in the corner that faces south, and then I'm like, well, why don't I just do the rest of the corners? That's when I realized that this room is situated so that each of the corners faces a cardinal direction.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, yeah, I got to do this. Look, sometimes the universe speaks back to you.
Yeah.
So that was one of them. Um, and it's easy for me to refresh these, to practice these, to reflect on what I've got going on. If I'm going to start doing something creative, I'll look for feathers to put on the air altar. And the other thing I put there are dead things, usually plants. But if I find like a skin or a pretty insect or something like that, just because I associate that with air,
Hmm.
since that's what fills our carcasses once we're gone. Um, that's how my brain works. I apologize for nothing. um, so yeah, that's what goes on the air altar, and I've got candles and anything that is fiery or warm. Um, and then over here I've got the moss art, and those are plastic, by the way. And I got a tree. There's butterflies. There's, the things that you can't see, but it's all of the earth.
Hmm.
I would honestly, I would like to get like a little corner shelf and just put like sand in it or something. I
Hmm.
feel like that would be the one that fell in the middle of the night while I was sitting here. So definitely elemental, and then food, always food.
Hmm.
That's kitchen magic. It's not always in the kitchen. So
What do you mean by that? Can you expand on that?
foraging.
Oh, I see.
When
Okay.
I eat on the patio, there's
Got it.
like my lunches used to be they were like my little mini vacation, and I would pack them accordingly. And so to me it wasn't just the kitchen. I would go somewhere else for this magic, and that was my food, was my break. That was my way out of chaos.
Mm.
I had the kind of job where some days I wanted a one-way ticket to the moon. I was a safety person during the pandemic. I did not want to be there. And that was the kind of thing that any little bit of quiet and grounding that I could get, I
Mm.
would take it. And food was always it, because you know, I'm fortunate enough to always be able to eat. So
Hmm.
I just incorporated a lot into what I'm doing. And in the way I always like to explain it. So thinking about how you eat beans and rice for New Year's, or whatever you eat for New Year's,
Hmm.
looking at all food that way. Like, pancakes are like coins. So that's a prosperity kind of thing, depending on what I'm trying to draw on or what I'm trying to focus on. Or if I'm craving a food, what message is trying to come through to me.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
New foods. Yeah, yeah. foods that, tomatoes. I used to hate tomatoes. Now I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And things that I've developed an allergy to barley, and they sneak it into things because it includes malt. Malt flavoring is in a lot of sweets and baked goods. I could eat their bread. Why can't I eat their donuts? Well, because they put malted barley flavoring in their donuts. Thinking about that and still just kind of embracing that, things that were good may go bad, and things that were once bad may go good. There's a lot of things you can do that food can do to help you, focus on the good things.
Mm-hmm.
The bad things.
I love that. I actually haven't really thought in that way. Like, if I'm craving something, what is the message there? I really like that question.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there is a nutritional. I mean, there's like, if you're craving chocolate, you need zinc or water, or if you're craving sweets, you probably are just thirsty. But there are certain cravings that you have. But this is like, man, I really want some coconut right now.
Mm-hmm.
I love coconut, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you just, man, I got my lips all set for some orange juice. Especially if it's something you don't normally eat. So.
Every once in a while, I have an orange juice craving. Like, I think it's the sugar. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's just about taking me back to like another time and place.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And
reminiscing.
is that not, fulfilling your intentions of just that moment, reliving that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you go back otherwise?
Yeah. This is a question from one of the viewers that this was a question they wanted asked in the interviews. Have you seen any energetic shifts over the decade that you could speak on or talk about in whatever way that makes sense to you?
Absolutely. You mean within the practice, or like
Mm-hmm. Sure.
seasonally, or okay? Yeah. I mean, the energy. It is. There's more community.
Mm.
I mean, back in the day, we weren't allowed to be as open with our practice.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go to my beach on a new moon, and there's going to be a drum circle there, and I
Mm-hmm.
can join it if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody bothers them, and there was a time not that long ago that I would not have dared to think that someone would do that, and
Mm-hmm.
thank goodness we've come that far.
Mm-hmm.
So in certain ways, the energy's there for that openness. I think the welcoming energy of having your own personal pagan witchcraft, whatever you call it, practice. We want that. That's why so many people are drawn to it. They're like, oh, why are so many people drawn to witchcraft?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's good for you. You're out in nature. You're allowed to dance around a fire or play drums in a circle and not get persecuted for it. Why that was ever so complicated for people is beyond me. It didn't make sense at the time. We can even openly question why anyone would have ever done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are pockets of places where, Sam would get kicked at people, but for where I am, for how far that distance between where that was and where we are now, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So those kinds of energetic shifts I'm seeing, there's more community, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more community while people are still allowed to be an individual. We used to go to kind of, it wasn't a coven, but we would just go to like a study group, and it was in the back of some guy's upholstery shop.
Mm-hmm.
And some people were in a coven, some people weren't. It was me and my brother and his girlfriend at the time. But that was what we had. That was our community. And I kind of didn't like some of those people, like because one of the guys did not want to validate anything that me and my brother had to offer because we were solitary. He thought that we should both try to form our own coven. He was trying to push that on us. I don't really see that a whole lot today. We all practice individually. There are still covens and things, but we practice individually, and it's not really questioned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nobody saying you're not a real witch. No,
Yeah.
but I don't think anybody. I mean, there might be people that because you can't pull off the Harry Potter stuff, but like that's not a real witch.
Yeah.
Like, no, I beg your pardon. But so yeah, I mean that's kind of an energetic shift. And yeah, I think, yeah, just the openness, the accessibility, the energy itself has shifted, and it's become greater.
I was going to say, I remember a few years ago reading some article. I cannot contextualize it at all for you, but I do remember reading an article saying that we were going to see a big shift in how people practice spiritual aspects, and it's going to go from being religious to being spiritual, and it's going to be very secular, and it'll be you as the practitioner and whatever it is that you're going to worship. What I've seen so far since I read that article, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because been this huge influx of young practitioners coming in over the last few years.
Young and old, and I'm a huge fan of the Montessori method. So I'm super honored to be a part of this. Thank you, by the way. Because it's it's the see one, do one, teach one. Like whatever you're trying to learn, anything that's like a hands-on project, watch someone do it, try it yourself, and then teach someone to do it. Like you never really master a skill until you can teach someone. So and that's really has been embraced, and even with technology, that has really sped up the process. I think it's eliminated discovery a little bit. Like we don't have that clumsy, messed up, trying to fumble through the book and peel this stolen apple, and throw it over my shoulder and make out a letter. Did I do that right? Oh, I was supposed to throw it over my left shoulder. Do I have to steal another apple? Can I use the same peels? We have video of that now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and whoever wrote that book is more accessible now. It's amazing in this community how many authors I admire that have spoken to me on Instagram, and I still get fangirl. It's like, oh my God, sorry, Moody. But she's an amazing person, and it's just so open, and I think it's also she kind of comes from that era where it really just started kicking off that that this was so accessible, and solitary practices were accepted. Witch Fox the internet had really kind of taken hold, and I think everything's just gained traction from there. I think it's a lot of it because it's become more accessible.
What do you feel like are some of your favorite lessons that you've learned over the years by doing witchcraft?
Consider what it is that you're doing, like where you're starting. It might be tempting, especially now, to try and achieve something that you don't want for a genuine reason. One of the things that I wanted more than anything in the world was a particular house. And I'd had my eye on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, here it comes. And finally got inside of this place. I was so disappointed. And I don't know if it was like, maybe that's, I was setting the expectation up. But really made me go home and look at where I was living at the time. I love that place so much more. And I'm like, I apologize in my house because I didn't appreciate it. So really starting with where I am, knowing where your directions are. Anywhere I go now, those are the kinds of things that I want to know, so that if something happens, I know what the direction it's coming from. I know what kind of tree that bird was in, or whatever. Just maintaining that awareness of where you are, and kind of where your place is, and then thinking about that on a spiritual level. If you start doing spell work and stuff, just making sure that you kind of stay in your lane. Because, especially if you're going to end up doing baneful magic, even something as seemingly innocuous as a freezer spell can backfire if you don't know the whole story. I've seen it happen. I've had it happen to me. Make sure that you know the whole story. Make sure that you're in your lane. Make sure you know absolutely where your lane is. Otherwise, well, we're getting kind of deep here. You shouldn't even be on the road.
We can go there if you want.
But it's, start with get your sense of direction. In any situation, there are so many things associated with that. We have the elements that are associated with each of the directions. There are colors, and it all branches out from there. But start with, like where you are now, which I've had to kind of do twice. Like I said, I've moved to a different hardiness zone. There's not a whole lot of difference. The winters are different. There have been seasonal shifts. Even since I've moved here, I've noticed seasonal shifts. Understanding that things change like that. The apple trees bloom a little later here. So preparing for that in a different way, knowing how we would have lived. What would I have done in my, now that I live in a condo, what would I be doing in my backyard with the space that I have? That's what I mean, like trying to translate that into a modern context. I don't live in that age, but if I lived back then, what would I do with this little piece of postage stamp yard that I have now? And I would plant peppers in pots is what I usually do. But just adapting to that. Definitely starting with where you are now. That sense of space.
What is your definition of a crone, and how do you fit into that?
Oh, I'm sick of everybody's shit.
I've heard that before.
Like there's no finite. It's not the first gray. It's the streak of grays. It's not the first wrinkle. It's the crow's feet when you smile. It's just like graduating from college. It's not so much graduation day. It's all the tests along the way that lead to that. But there's no graduation day. I think it's going back to that see one, do one, teach one. It's when you reach your teach one phase and you're able to just pass your lessons on to the next generation, or to whoever, not even the next generation, but to whoever has something to learn from you. If that makes sense, in whatever context, whether it's on purpose or not.
So like mastery.
A body of knowledge. Yeah, you mastery, absolutely. And just planting that seed somewhere else, planting another to see one and then do one and then also teach one. It's not one definite moment. I'm sure for a lot of women it would be like there's going to be that one, yep, okay, I'm there. Okay, and then where you go from there is ultimately up to you, but I think that would also depend on how that experience went down. I don't know. I like to think of it as a kind of thing. It's inevitable. There's beauty and grace and getting older. I think so many things become so much sweeter, especially when you reach the point where you realize that there are fewer days ahead of you than there are behind you. That was the arrival level for me, was when I realized, like, okay, I need to start planning my life a little bit differently. Because I could reasonably believe, life expectancy where I'm like, wow, I'm halfway there. And I didn't think about too much, and then I'm like, I really am halfway there. So I think that everybody reaches that point, but there's some kind of an aha moment for everybody, but it's not the same for everybody. So.
Right. So based on what you said, if I could sum it up, it is when you can teach somebody, so mastery over something, and when you have less life ahead of you than behind you.
Behind you, yeah. And you're sick of everyone's shit.
And you're sick of everyone's shit.
I'm not really like that. Although I have watched people. You don't even have to say anything. I think that's when life gives it to you. Like you have marinated long enough. You get to shoot somebody a look, and they will leave you alone.
It's interesting because I feel like where you said there's less life ahead of you than behind you. Like I feel like I started that early in my mid-30s.
I was 38. I was thinking like 75, 76. Yeah, it was right before I turned 40. Because I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to be 40. I'm like, I might not live to be, and now I probably would live to be 80, but still, like I keep raising that bar and kind of look at it every year now. Well, now I'm halfway to what? Oh, okay. I'm still going pretty strong.
Yeah.
It's a good, way to kind of, judge your bearings. Okay, I'm still doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm only halfway to 90.
Right. I know if I sort of average out the age of my grandmothers, one died at 98, the other one at 96. So maybe I will, maybe I will get to be that age. We'll see.
We don't have the genes of longevity in my family, but the advanced medicine has helped a lot. Like my mom's in her early 80s, and a lot of my aunts have lived to see their at least late 70s.
Yeah.
But my grandparents all died in their early 70s. My dad died in his late 60s. So I don't know. But
Yeah.
saying like it's not that I'm sick of people shit. I just don't care. Like I'm gonna do me. If you want to come along for the ride, that's fine. But yeah, it's I don't know. Shooting people looks is not the kind of thing you want to do all the time, but when you get there. But it's
The evil eye.
I think it's definitely, yeah. I think that's if there really was a finite moment, if you really want to think about it, if somebody's looking for this like future advice, think about every birthday. Are you halfway there yet? Do you think you're about halfway?
Mm-hmm.
And it's if the answer is no, you just don't care. But once that answer is yes, I don't know. I think it just gives everybody a different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's just
Yeah.
maybe not everybody. Maybe just me.
I remember this doesn't really have anything to do with, moving into crone years, but I do remember a moment when I was on a public bus and I was probably about 26 or something, and or maybe even a little bit younger, could have been like 24. And these two teenagers hopped on the back of because it was one of the long buses with the door in the front and then a door in the back.
Mm-hmm.
So the back doors open and these two teenagers like jumped on and then took out like markers and started tagging on the bus. And it was so toxic smelling. I got pissed, man. And I was really loudly, I cannot believe I did this. I was like, what are you two? Dogs marking your territory?
You can't help yourself. You can't help
No,
yourself.
it just like came out.
It doesn't matter what age you are. Yeah, you know. But with age, it's like a
Yeah.
magic trick. It's like
And
a magic trick.
I remember thinking to myself, I was like, holy shit, when did I get old?
Like
I'm
just now
definitely
on
not
this
a
bus.
teenager anymore.
Oh, you gotta love the bus though.
Yeah. Uh, anyway, all right, next. Do you feel like there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think that wisdom comes from like that discovery process, and knowledge is more like a rote memory.
Mm-hmm.
You can have knowledge without wisdom, but I think it's kind of hard to have wisdom without knowledge. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to gain knowledge and wisdom along the way at the same time in order to achieve wisdom. And it kind of cuts back into what I was saying earlier with advancements in technology. You know, at first it was like books on tape, books on CD. You
Mm-hmm.
could get any book. And actually, I was talking about my first book, occult books, like books on witchcraft and Wicca, had only just started being sold in bookstores.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just advancing from there. So all that technology, watching it go through, different steps and different iterations and the videos and the availability, it kind of breaks it down because, you know, they'll tell you in the video, yeah, you got to throw that apple peel over your left shoulder so you don't ever mess it up. You don't ever know whether or not can I use those apple peels again? Did they break? No. Go ahead and use them again. It doesn't say that in the book, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And I guess I don't know if you knew what spell it was. It's a horrible example, but it's making a great example for what point I have to make here. But it's it's that discovery process.
Mm-hmm.
And you know knowledge knowledge is when you know where the four directions are.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom is knowing that, seeing three flashes of lightning, and I'm totally making this, I have no idea what this means, in a northern sky means that, well, it means that rain is coming, but it means that somebody's going to knock on your door soon, something like that, that those little things. And that kind of stuff comes from, hey, there's three, hey, somebody just knocked on my door. Now it could be a coincidence, but those are the kinds of things that you have to kind of trend, discovering what works and what doesn't work, instead of taking someone else's word for it. Like how I associate dead things with air. I don't know if a lot of people do that. I don't think that's part of anyone's knowledge set. That's something that I gained the wisdom of over the course of years. Like I want to have a place for these things. And someone else had suggested incorporating the element of spirits, which I have, but I only have 4 corners in this room. I prefer to keep it as 4. That's what's convenient for me, just in my practice. Dishes, wheels, so many things come in sets of 4. Again, that comes back to keeping my practice and to what is convenient for how I live. You need both, but you really have to start with knowledge, just that simple memorization of facts, and then taking that with you forward and kind of tying all those together, using these things as like a recipe, purple birds versus red birds versus, rough waves versus, water that's smooth as glass. Granted, there's always something, scientific that'll tie in with this, weather patterns, migration patterns, but there's also a metaphysical meaning to most of these things too. You can learn them, but how much are you going to retain and make that mean something more than, a bird flying in the sky or, a muskrat stealing your golf ball?
Do they do that? Do muskrats steal golf balls?
No, but geese will. Geese will absolutely steal your golf ball because they think that it's their egg.
Aww.
Yeah, it's sad and also hilarious. My husband got attacked, and I can't talk about it because I'll get the giggle fits and I won't be able to stop. But they're very persistent. But yeah. I'm like, baby, just pick it up. I'm like, they think it's their egg. Just pick it up and go. But yeah, so yeah. And I think once he hit it and they realized that it wasn't an egg, I don't know what goes on through a goose's mind, but I don't know. It was, yeah, they will absolutely. Maybe a muskrat will steal your golf ball. I don't know, but what does that mean? That means that you need to stop slicing to the right. But maybe that does mean something. Why do I keep slicing to the right? What's going on over there? Actually, if you're slicing to the left, because you're tense on one side or the other, you're twisted in some way. I really get zen with my golf game. I think that was something that helped me along the way, because it puts you out in nature. And if you watch my latest video, there was a muskrat, like a herd of deer and ducks trying to mate, all in one little tee box. So there isn't anything that I can't incorporate in my practice, honestly. But
are there any practices that have been a staple in your craft throughout the decades?
Herbalism, Cunningham's Complete Guide to Herbs, and in a lot of his book, incense oils and brews, but yeah, herbs and incense. But I think those kind of go hand in hand. I've never made my own incense though. So every herb book I feel like I have that has recipes in it will at some point have some kind of incense that you can make, or a perfume, which I have made. But yeah, herbalism, because you can incorporate that into anything, your food, a tea, it's always there. It's at the grocery store, it's at the gas station. Like, they got salt and pepper there, little disposable salt and pepper shakes. I bet they got those at the gas station. I like to think about how accessible things are. Again, going back to what in my modern day pagan life would I be using. And herbs have always been there. Even when I was, practicing, not practicing, or I was, questioning anything, herbs and food. We say herbalism. I include all food in that, just because there's no stopping point for me. Herbs, they do have a medicinal value, but so does all food. I've dealt with some pretty significant stomach issues throughout my life. So, understanding probiotics, prebiotics, I make my own kimchis, I make my own shrubs, and that's food, and that is also medicine. Actually, why I'm the Peckish Pagan, because you start your YouTube channel and like, well, you got to have what do you do the best? I'm like, I'm a really good cook. I told my husband, I said, baby, I might get fat. I'm probably going to end up getting a little wrinkled. I'm going to look old. I hope I get old, but you will never, ever be able to slap the good cook out of me. You won't. Like, that's a thing. that just kind of sticks with you forever. And unfortunately, we found out that dementia does run in our family, so I might forget how to cook, but I'm leaving all the recipes and the videos. I told him, I was like, if we get there, I'll be sure to write them all down for you.
Aw.
We joke about stuff like that, but but it runs in his family too. So we try to keep a sense of humor about it as much as we can. Um, but then making sure that we do what we can to delay that or prevent that from happening um,
Mhm.
to either of us. Yeah, but we have plans in place for stuff like that. But for right now, we're fighting with food and just staying active. But yeah, and I guess candle magic too.
Mhm.
There's always something to burn a candle about,
Mhm.
and that's something that is that is universal across a lot, if not most religions.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say all. I don't know about every religion, but every one that I've shown an interest in or studied at all. There's candle, there's fire, there's light.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah. Herbs and candles, food and fire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything in your practice that has helped you get through low times or even high times?
There are a couple things. Like I try to think of, if it's the kind of thing that I can see coming around the bend.
Mm.
Um, and I consider this a high time, but also just understanding that there was change, and it had the potential to be a low time. My daughter moved back in. This was a couple years ago for 6 months. We had a plan. She's like, okay, let's do this. And knowing that that was happening, there were a few other things going on, and I was going to be experiencing a lot of change. So I went and got a Moldavite ring, and made it into a talisman. I still wear it to this day, just to kind of help facilitate positive change that sets everybody in a direction that's on their own path that's right for them. That's why I still wear it, because it's effective. I've had a lot of success with it. But looking at things like that, and kind of trying to plan for it as much as you can. Um, my wedding was hand fasting. It was a love spell. Um,
That's cool. Love that.
um, I I've been recovering from PTSD.
Mm.
I'm not going to go into details of the nature of it, but through the course of developing coping mechanisms, it's like a game. It's kind of like I Spy, but I go through the rainbow. I look for something red. I look for something yellow. Roy G. Biv, right? So I have a little card in my wallet, because one of the things that I will say to myself is, "Now is not then, here is not there," and just repeat it over and over. So I made a little. It's kind of like a prayer card,
Mhm.
but it's just different colors. I've got a little collage, and then on the other side of it, I wrote, um, "Now is not then, here is not there," and I laminated it, so that I don't have to struggle to look for colors. For now, it's just knowing that that card is in my pocket and that I have it to look at almost immediately. If I know that I can reach for it, I start feeling some relief.
Mm.
Um, and that's I absolutely that is I put sigils into this. It was art magic, and that's was definitely one of my lowest points. And yeah, having that available. If that's not magic, I don't know how to really describe that into too many more words. But if that's not magic, I don't know what is.
Mhm.
Just that, I mean, it is immediate, almost. And I don't even see it. I just know that it's there,
Mhm.
and it provides what I need,
Mhm.
which at that moment is relief.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah. Um, and I've also started crafting mocktails, incorporating magic into the celebrations and stuff, like the shrubs and stuff that I make. And then also in my little town, we have so many amazing little shops, and they just put in a non-alcoholic liquor store, and it's
Oh,
right next to the regular liquor store.
so what kinds of things do they sell? I'm curious.
They sell. So she sells a lot of the adaptogen beverages. They kind of taste like beer. Like there's this one called Chambly Libido, and it tastes like a pineapple Leinenkugel. It has no alcohol in it at all, but it does kind of make you warm and fuzzy, and
Kind of
my
like
husband had
kombucha.
one. And it was, yeah, it was, no, this one, it might have, no, it was not kombucha, but it was definitely fermented because it was fizzy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm assuming it was fermented. It was fizzy. It was good.
Mm-hmm.
But they have, so a lot of different beverages like that. Um, there's one, they're actually little ritual cocktails. Man, I forget what they're called. Anyway, it escapes me. My sincerest apologies, but they're out there. Um, but there are different flavors. One is like sunshine, and that's for like morning, and really, it has all of the herbs and ingredients that are gonna pep you up and get you going.
Mm-hmm.
There was another one. It tasted kind of like a vanilla Coca-Cola. It was called Grounding. Man, that one was good. That one I would buy in bulk. Thank goodness it is a beverage because I would drink it. And then they have liquor. I ended up buying, it's called Ritual whiskey. And it actually, when you put it in a cocktail, it tastes like whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
but drinking it straight, and that's the other thing about this place is like you can taste some of these, she's got the little, taster cups. Um, it tasted more like one of the tonics that I make than it did whiskey, and that's why I bought it. But I promised myself, I'm like, I'm gonna get one, I'm gonna try one of these. And so I swapped it out for a bourbon that I had that I ended up trying somewhere else that actually does taste like bourbon, but is zero alcohol in it. It's not the NA, it's zero alcohol, but there's a brand called Ritual. They make whiskey, bourbon, and I think tequila. And then there's another one called, I think, Spirit 74. They make spiritless spirits, and yeah, just mixing all those together, and then they just legalized THC and THC products in Ohio, marijuana. You can have it all, apparently, and they're like syrups that you can drink. I'm like, you mean like lean? Is what is this? And it is, you can mix it into a cocktail. You can drink it. So you can really, and that's the kind of thing that I prefer on like a ritual level because it really, relaxes me and puts me in a mood, and not all the time, but for, that's something that I would prefer to use in a ritualistic fashion. So
Like
um,
a modern day
it's just,
flying ointment.
yeah, my friends are really enjoying the adaptogen cocktails because you really do feel something from these things.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a tipsy drunk, but like a, mellow, depending on what it is that it's trying to achieve. And that's all again with food and herbs and mushrooms, and I mean that's also good. Yeah.
It's
Some
cool.
of that stuff can be foraged.
Yeah. You said you forage.
I try. I do. From the backyard, it's usually things like we have wood sorrel.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put that in gazpacho.
Oh,
Um,
how
we
much?
haven't had mushrooms for a while. Pardon?
How much wood
Um,
sorrel?
oh, just a little, maybe like a handful.
Okay.
I'll chop
Interesting.
it up. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's, yeah, I just, because I like to put a little lemon in my gazpacho. It just replaces anything tangy I would have put in there.
Mm-hmm.
I should make gazpacho. I should do a gazpacho video.
Gazpacho's yummy. I make gazpacho too.
Yeah, it's like all the garden stuff. I used to forage for mushrooms. Again, I don't live there anymore, but like my backyard in the house where I grew up at, was a hotbed for morels.
Oh.
I think that's actually where I first started foraging for anything. But now, if I forage for anything, it's usually stuff that I'm going to put in a salad. I would like to head out to some of the places, like we've got parks and stuff where there are more trees that I can, get some. Well, I couldn't get magnolia buds this year because we had a frost and they all died. But different flowers and things. Some people consider foraging, you're foraging for things to eat. I forage for anything to put in my practice. I
Mm-hmm.
know what all the weeds around me can do. We've got stuff called all heal. We've got a lot of St. John's wort that grows around us. Looking at those things, I collect all that stuff and either dry it out if I can cook it with it. I will. I have 37 metro parks, and they have signs for what you can't pick, but everything else is open game. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, it's not something that I do nearly enough. But my husband knows that I don't like it when the HOA people spray for dandelions because I was going to eat those. And some of it I plant in my own backyard, like hostas. That's my plan for tomorrow night's dinner is to clip some of those off and saute them up. They taste like like peppery asparagus, because they're just starting to come out.
Just
they're really
the leaves? Good. You cook the leaves?
Yeah, you can cook the leaves as they grow out. Now, right now they're just the little buds, so I'm just going to nip a few of those off. But I have made salads with the leaves, like a little saute. They got this stuff, it's like a wilted lettuce, but you basically, you can use, whatever oil. I like to use bacon grease. I like to use that on a lot of stuff. But that's, one of the things that I save from the rest of my cooking. Fry that off, and a little bit of onions. You can chop them up, put them in there, and that's its own side dish. But it's really good. And you can do that with like regular leaf lettuce, Boston leaf, romaine. Just a real quick light saute. That's a good recipe.
I didn't know
you can do it as long as you're not spraying with pesticides. You can do it with hostas.
Yeah, I grew up with hostas, and they were all just decorative, in the yard or whatever. But I didn't realize you could actually eat them. There were ferns too.
I've left them alone because if that's the thing is if I forage for the ferns, they won't grow this year. Like they'll come back, just not this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fiddlehead ferns, those are good too.
Did you have any role models for your practice when you were younger?
Scott Cunningham.
Okay.
He was a big one because he was really one of the first at the time who was, encouraging people to develop a solitary practice. He was really making and it was, he always wrote about Wicca, but he still made it out in such a way that if you throw it over the apple peel over your right shoulder instead of your left shoulder, you're probably going to be okay. And also encouraging people to experiment with things like that. And then he also provided that knowledge base. He understood that you're going to need this book of herbs. This is as exhaustive as I could get. And one of the things I loved about him is that he would only write about the things that he felt were worth passing on. So he did I think it's called Wicca in the Kitchen now, or Kitchen Wicca. It was called Wicca in the Kitchen, and then Llewellyn republished it and retitled it, but it's the same book. And he does not write about any kind of meats in there because he was a vegetarian. So anything that aligns with his personal convictions, that's what he would write about. If they didn't align with his personal convictions, he wouldn't write about it. He didn't know. And it wasn't something that he presented in a way that like, oh, you're dirty and wrong if you eat animals. He's like, I do not eat animals, therefore we're not going to talk about those in this book. Simple as that. He was so very much himself, teaching others how to develop their own practice. I don't know that anybody was doing what he did back then the way that he did it. I mean, there were other authors. I don't know. Nobody called out to me like Scott Cunningham did. There were the Farrars, but they really did like the Witch's Bible. That was another book that kind of got me started, and I have not laid hands on one of those in probably 25 years, over 25 years. It used to be such an important part of my practice, but when I decided that the rigid ritual, I think the high magic, it's just not for me. It's just not for me. I can't even get right shoulder, left shoulder down. I am not cut out for high magic. Right. You know what you're capable of. But no, I mean it's not that I haven't tried it. I just find more enjoyment. I have more success with my solitary practice. And even then, like calling it a solitary practice now, it's not necessary. But I think it's because we've started talking about it in that past context that I start calling it my solitary practice again. But so yeah, Scott Cunningham, and Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
I love, and okay, and Vincent Price too, but Dolly, I love Dolly. I try to model myself after how she behaves. She is large. I could never be like her. You know what I'm saying? I could never be that just Dolly.
Hmm.
Um, but the way that she is with her heart, she is as beautiful on the inside as she is on the outside. She is Dolly Parton, and she is still super humble.
Hmm.
Every time she makes the news, like that it's going to be a tearjerker. Be like that just restored my faith in humanity. She's done it so many times. She embodies femininity. Like she's got all of the stereotypical characteristics that a woman should have. But then she is so much a man. Like I would not want to piss off Dolly Parton. She would probably beat my ass even now. Do you know what I'm saying? Like she's super feminine,
Hmm.
but she is also very strong woman. And Vincent Price, I love him because he has that sinister way about him, but he is deep down was a very loving and diverse man, and was so just masculinely manly, but in very much in touch with his feminine side. He did it with such grace. You know what I'm saying? There was something about Vincent Price that always just I still love watching his movies, and I wish um, that he was around longer to do more. But yeah, I have Saint candles for both of them.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I want a Saint candle for Scott Cunningham. We need to get some Saint candles for the other saints too.
You should
But
make
yeah, they're and I try to idolize myself like that. With Vincent, he wasn't just an actor. He didn't just do the horror films and the Dr. Phibes. He did the funny, campy ones like The Raven, and then some of the stuff that he did later in life. And then he also did cookbooks. He sold art at Sears. And it wasn't just for money. It was to make these things more accessible to people. It was to bring, beauty where people might not think that they were capable of having that kind of thing. People just didn't have artwork on their walls like that.
Hmm.
Maybe portraits, but it was expensive. People
Mhm.
just, and he blazed a trail there.
Hmm.
Um, and then Dolly just dollying as she always does. But yeah, I've got a Dolly coffee mug. Anybody that works with me knows for enough time. Yeah, people are. Yeah, they know that I've been there about 6 months now. I love Dolly, but last place I was there for 7 years, I have so much Dolly stuff from just little trips and trinkets over the years. People bring you. It's like, oh, but yeah, I love Dolly Parton.
Since we're on the topic of Dolly, your experience as a woman or as a female has impacted your craft, if it has.
I don't really think about my experience as a female. I mean, I don't. I probably should, but I don't think that I could break it down in a way that isn't any different from the female experience in general.
Hmm.
If that makes sense. I grew up the youngest of five,
Hmm.
four boys, and I was the only girl from age 4 on. So I embraced a lot of like non-traditional girl hobbies. I don't know if that kind of formed something in me that when it comes to like work or certain things, I don't assign like a gender to it. Like I'm a civil engineer. I was amazed at how much I could get for scholarships just because I was a female. I felt like I was cheating. You know what I'm saying? Like, how come? Um, like it just, I can't wrap my brain around it. And then being in the field and being discriminated against, um, was something that I absolutely did not want to believe until I was absolutely definitely staring it down. It was ugly, and it was something that I didn't understand, and I just on some things I don't see the point in applying a gendered experience to it. Also, I think maybe thinking that I'm nothing special and that my experience as a woman isn't different from any other woman's experience.
Hmm.
Um, I gave an example of, when my daughter moved home. I mean, that's something that we kind of did together. Um, I mean, that was a female experience. For us, we did like, our girly things. We went to a shamanic soul retrieval workshop together. We went through this whole thing together, and it was as like a mother and daughter. So I guess my experience as a woman, if I wasn't a woman, I would never have been able to experience that. Um, and I guess that's kind of insensitive saying that now because there are people who are women who won't. But my experience, that was definitely something that yeah, I'm glad we talked about this because I guess there are ways to see it like that, but um trying to pass it on to my daughter, any of this onto my daughter has been my main goal.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the YouTube channel, for being the Peckish Pagan, because there are recipes that I never cooked for her. And now, like she's learned since I've started the channel, we things have changed, but that was the original impetus. And food was always the drive, and she knows how to cook some things, but not everything. And definitely, my spiritual practice is something that I've been able to hand down to her too, and very much in the same way my mom kind of handed it to me. Although when I became Catholic, she also became Catholic, but she has an understanding that she could come to me tomorrow and say, "Mom, I'm converting to Islam," and I'd be like, "Puddin', you go. Let's go get you a prayer mat." Like, whatever she chooses on her journey, she knows that she can. But I think that she has seen so many better things for me since I've embraced this practice, and like the moments throughout our lives that she's seen me, more in tune with my spiritual practice. That those are the times when I seem the happiest. I seem to have it all together. That she's the most interested. So yeah, I guess the passing it along. That's been a huge part of my practice recently. But other than that, I have to think a little bit deeper because I don't.
I mean, I would think that would make sense as the answer to that question is like it has to do with my kid.
Yeah, right. And it's speaking on that, I feel called to having children. I can no longer have children. That was a tough pill to swallow. There are a lot of people out there that never could, but there are a lot of people out there who have families that are not blood relatives. I used to work in a nonprofit, and one of the things that we had to get a lot of our volunteers to accept was the fact that there's no such thing as a nuclear family. We would go into these programs, and they would have like the 2.2 kids, mom, dad, and that's not always the case. So I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge, man, woman, whatever you bring into your practice, family, children, do it with love. Do it with love and leave a legacy. That's all. Who's on the background? Somebody's digging in your.
She's the couch shark.
Oh, sweetie, I love you. She's tater bugger. She's about to take a nap. Okay, night. Sorry.
That's okay.
I love dogs. I love all animals.
Yeah, me too. What do you feel has been your greatest adventure in your craft?
Honestly, looking for local rocks recently. I mean, I've had some adventures. Trying to incorporate the magic into a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, but rock hunting has really been the big one recently for me. Because it's not just during the day, it's also at night with a UV flashlight. We have a lot of stuff that comes out of the Great Lakes that phosphoresces. Sodalite it'll glow orange under a UV lamp. So yeah, blue stone will glow its complementary color under a UV lamp.
Wow.
And there are I think 4 or 5 different types of stones that you can find that come out of the Great Lakes. Most of them are orange. There's a blue one. There's one that completely sucks up all the light. That's a neat one. So it phosphoresces black.
Hmm.
I'm gonna have to look this one up because I don't know what the science is behind it, but once the light hits it, it's black. Everything else has, it's got like its own, like you can kind of tell like that might be gray, that might be whatever. And then
Hmm.
you've got the things that are UV, they look neon. And then they've got this one, it is just black.
Hmm.
You can get some reflections off of it, but it is black. So it is really neat. The different fossils that I find just along the beach. I found Petoskey stones. I found horn coral, Charlevoix stones. We have stuff on Lake Erie. It's called birkenite, and it's made out of beer cans
Okay.
that get melted somewhere along the way, and then they wash up on the shore, and they look like silver blobs. And people think they've hit the jackpot with all these little silver blobs, thinking it's silver, but it's aluminum. Um, but aluminum has its own properties.
Hmm.
But as you go again up into Michigan and Wisconsin, they will find, I forget the name of the peninsula. There is an abundance of copper will
Hmm.
wash up on the shore like that.
Oh, that's neat.
Um, yeah, yeah, I haven't found any in this area, but the granite, we have so many different strata of beautiful, gorgeous granite. These rainbow stones.
Hmm.
We do have carnelian, calcite, um, garnet.
Hmm.
So and all of these wash up on our beaches.
Hmm.
We don't have a lot of shells, but we have a bounty of driftwood and just beautiful agate, layered agates, chert, flint, all these things. This is my adventure, my rockin' adventure.
Hmm.
And it's local. That's what I like about this one is that I can keep all of this local. I have stretches of beaches I can just go hound for an hour. It gets me out in nature, kind of gets me in tune with things. Um, that is my me time, and I am one of those people who I will absolutely be intolerable if I don't have some kind of time like that to myself on a fairly regular basis.
Hmm.
Um, and then even with that, I can look at these again. I've gotten quite a collection. I've had to dial it back. I have taken to going back and maybe just picking up a few things, but with my focus being on cleaning up the beach.
Hmm.
So that is me getting in touch with my spirit of place. And that's been huge for me. I can remember the trip that I was out that I really felt that connection and have been kind of riding that spark and that energy ever since. And it's done nothing but great things for me, just kind of having that focus. Um, and all the people who kind of spearheaded the conversation about spirit of place and genus Loki. That's a thing. That's my current adventure, and it was because I didn't want my rocks to be counterfeit. I didn't want them to come from somewhere that wasn't, you know. I know where a lot of my stuff comes from now. Not that I've gotten rid of it, but the things that I'm bringing in now, I know
Hmm.
where it came from because I picked it up off the ground.
Hmm.
So I can reasonably expect that, it came from here. And that's been a fun one. And I'm gonna be going to other beaches with my UV flashlight. So if you see anybody out at night with UV flashlight, they're probably looking for rocks, whether it's on the beach or not.
Good to know. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
that's a thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
What do you feel are the most important things in life?
Being considerate, try to understand somebody. The saying, everybody's fighting a battle that you know nothing about, that's true. Everybody. Even if their sock is falling down inside their shoe. That could irritate them to no end.
Hmm.
Just because their battle isn't as hard or as dangerous as everybody's fighting a battle of some kind. Try to be understanding. Share your food and be nice to each other. Be nice whenever it's an option. Yeah, being nice is always free. I mean, being an asshole is always free, but it's going to cost you in the long run.
What do you wish you could tell your younger self?
Take that apprenticeship at the Holden Arboretum. Do it. Don't hesitate. Find one thing and stick with it. I think I've spent a lot of time kind of bouncing around from one thing to another and come back around to something and it's like, man, I could have been doing this the whole time. Like
Mm.
calligraphy. I had the sets, I did a little bit, I wrote some letters, I made a little illuminated manuscript page, and that was it. And I came back to him. I'm like, man, I love this so much. Why would I put this down for something I thought I might like? I didn't really hang on to. I would be a master at some kind of craft now. I think if I'd stuck with that, I would probably be the kind of person who binds their own books and makes their own ink and pens and nibs and paper and probably like the thread and everything. You know, I want something like that, but I think for me now, I fear that I don't have that kind of time left. But then there's that little feisty 25-year-old that says, no, 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 no. You still got about 48 more years left. You're good.
Yes, you
But
do.
yeah, you know, it's I went to college when I was 36. So it's starting late is not a thing for me. But again, it kind of goes back. Like, do I have enough days left? Is it worth the endeavor? Should I pare it down to something else? That's kind of where I'm at now. I do actually, one of the other things I like to do is bookbinding. I could maybe it's non-zero, so the possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, stick with something. Yeah, take the apprenticeship. Stick with something, and don't let Greg get away. He came back 17 years later, but I
Is
don't
that
know.
your
We like to
husband?
say, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We met when I was 20. Right around the time that I started, building up my own personal practice and really figuring out who I was, like my Aries era. I am. We met at a mall. I sold him a pager,
Okay.
and thanks to technology, we ended up being friends on Facebook. And yeah, he was a DJ. And I'm like, oh my God, I used to date him. He was the best guy ever. And he was like the one who got away. I never really stopped thinking about him. But yeah, he just hit me up one day, said, you want to go bowling? I was like, heck yeah, I want to go bowling. And we never really looked back.
Aw.
And when he proposed, he actually went on eBay and got a little blue pager, like what I'd sold to him, and put that in the little message window. It was so 90s.
Wow. That's
Yeah, in the
creative.
car. And we were in the car that we shared our first kiss in, because he
Wow.
kept that car. Yeah. He was good. It's like a little 4-cylinder, and he's like, I'm gonna make it into a race car. And I'm like, I know about cars. Like I grew up around muscle cars, again, 4 older brothers. I know about cars. I'm like, is this a 4-cylinder? And I looked at it and I saw stars in this guy's eyes. And I'm like, okay, you just might, guy. And he did. He did. When we went bowling that night, I said, you still have that? He's like, I do. And I was sold. That was it for me. I'm like, yep, I'm done. All right. I hope this goes well. And it did.
Aw.
So yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't give my younger self that advice, because we had to become the people we are today for this to work. But it sure would have been nice to, I wish I would have met you sooner so I could love you longer.
Aw.
I mean, I did, but it didn't work out like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's
no
sweet.
regrets though. Thank you.
What do you feel that you were most wrong about?
That I wasn't capable of some things. Like the kind of, well, this isn't going to work. Like, you can't do this. Other people might. Do you really think you have this in you? I guess it's doubting myself. I was wrong about doubting myself. And, just not taking that leap more often. Yeah.
I resonate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I probably slowed my down thinking, with just that negative, this might work, but not for you. You can't make this work. You don't got the juice. And then it turns out I do have the juice. So yeah, once you realize you have the juice enough, like it's, again, I think it ties back in with that the not giving a shit anymore. Yeah, you know what? I get the juice. Yeah, I think that's what I was most wrong about. I think that's where I really slowed myself down, and just believing that it couldn't happen for me.
Thank you. That's it. Those are all the questions that I have. Thank
I
you
hope
for
I
your
did well.
time.
Thank you.
Story.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody watching. You can find Peck over at Peckish Pagan if you want to follow more of her stuff and watch her do her oracle deck that you're creating.
I'm going to end up encouraging everybody to make their own oracle deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll plug it. Go get some watercolor papers. Get cyan, get magenta, yellow, and black. Any color of paint will make it happen. It's a local spirit of place oracle deck that I'm making for my own personal practice. It's the kind of thing that I think, if that's your bag, that you should try it too. Because there are a lot of things that, I have in the Great Lakes region you don't have in California. There are things that you have in California that are super amazing and have a lot of deep meaning that I wouldn't have here. I think I'm going to be starting out with drawing the first name and figuring out how to do that first sketch. That's going to be my next video, so stay tuned.
Yay, can't wait to see it. Thank you, Peck.
Thank you, Aurora. Take care.